Welcome to Rewired Sober, the podcast that tells the truth about why women drink and what it actually takes to stop. Spoiler alert, it's not a character flaw. It's your conditioning and the roles you were handed long before you ever picked up a drink. I'm your host, Kate Vitella. I have been an RN for well over 2 decades. I'm addiction trained, a psychiatric nurse, and a sobriety coach. And this is where we do science and soul work of a woman's recovery. So you can stop white knuckling this shit and actually start trusting yourself. I am a raging feminist, a fashion lover, and I swear a lot. So if that's for you, buckle up, let's go. Welcome back to Rewired Sober. Welcome, my friends. This is a solo episode. Something I thought I should record because I hear a lot of false assumptions and pseudoscience. It's a common misbelief I hear thrown around all the time. So we're going to be talking about the science of dopamine, anticipation, and really why the first drink is never as good as you've worked it up to be. So let's get seated. Here's this misconception I hear from women trying to change their relationship with alcohol. All the time I hear, I just need this dopamine hit, right? I need some dopamine, or I'm just seeking dopamine. I went shopping because I need dopamine. I drank because I crave the dopamine. And while there is a grain of truth to that statement, it's also one of the most misunderstood phrases in the recovery circles. Because what if I told you that the craving often isn't for alcohol? What you're craving may not even be dopamine. What if you're actually craving relief, a break, comfort, something new, exciting, some novelty, right? Connection. Sometimes I'm craving a reward for all my hard work, or I'm craving just the permission to sit the fuck down and stop. Or there's a craving for this time where you want to transition out of a high stress mode. And alcohol's really just become the delivery system that your brain associates with all these feelings. Now, I'm like you. When I first started talking about recovery and alcohol, I too went around saying, I crave that dopamine hit. I need that. But when I really dove into the science of it, it really changed how I understood cravings. It changed how I understood my own drinking. And once you understand what's happening in your brain, cravings become much less mysterious and much less personal and powerful. So I want to start with kind of that Friday afternoon feeling, like a scenario we all know. It's Friday afternoon. You've had a long week. You've been working, momming, managing a household, whatever you're doing to bust your ass. You're taking care of everyone else. And somewhere around what we call sometimes the witching hour, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, this thought pops into your head. Or maybe it's kind of been brewing. Like, I get a glass of wine at the end of the day. A glass of wine would be so nice. Now, here's where it's fascinating. Nothing's happened, right? You haven't poured the drink. You haven't gone to the liquor store or the bodega or whatever. You haven't even taken a sip of alcohol. But yet your mood starts improving. You feel a little lighter, right? You're going to get that glass of wine at the end of the evening. You get a little optimistic. You even feel a little more relaxed. Why? Because you haven't even taken a drink yet, because your brain has started to anticipate the relief. And see, the reward process begins before the reward arrives. So if you look at the central themes in Dr. Anna Lembke's book, Dopamine Nation, this is sort of the Bible on dopamine. She explains that dopamine isn't really the pleasure chemical that we've all been taught, right? The way we throw the words around. It's more accurate to think of dopamine as an anticipation chemical, the motivation chemical, the pursuit, the Pay attention to this. This matters to your brain chemical. So if you think about it, your brain's not really celebrating the actual wine, the fermented grape. It's celebrating the expectation of the wine. That's a huge distinction. And I think about like planning a vacation. For me, looking online for airfare and planning the trip is the best part. Like, what restaurants am I going to go to? What shops? What theater? Who am I going to see when I get there? What am I going to wear? Oh, that's so fun, right? But sometimes the actual trip arrives and it's underwhelming. Or we forget how exhausting it is to travel. You're cramped on the plane. You don't have a lot of leg room. I mean, those memes and jokes flying around where there's a woman in an airport dressed to the nines and she's ready to take a seat in 43B. I mean, part of me thinks the reason why you're booking the back of the plane is because you're so excited to be planning the trip. You're on a high. You're on a trip planning high. You're on a vacation planning high. And that high made you book a cheap plane ticket at the back of the plane where it's going to suck. Once I booked a plane ticket, I was so excited to go to New York for this event during a time when I normally didn't think I could afford it. And I found an inexpensive ticket. I was so thrilled that I actually got to see New York in the spring that I booked a ticket with my seat, literally the one right up next to the bathroom. And I remember thinking that when I was in that mode of New York in the spring, I'm so excited, I'm going to wear this, I'm going to do this. I was already planning my selfies, right? I was getting so excited that I overlooked all the hardships of the trip. I overlooked that I would smell bathroom and hear the toilet flush 8,000 times. Like, I kind of knew that intellectually. Like, we know intellectually drinking is going to make us feel like shit, right? We know we're probably going to be hungover. Or if we're trying to drop weight, we're probably going to feel really bloated and gross and not have the energy to do our workout or go on a walk. We know we're going to have a headache the next day and maybe rebound anxiety. We know this intellectually, but the anticipation high, the vacation planning is what gets us. And I think that's worth exploring here and really bringing to attention. Because once we understand this, there's not a lot of mystery left of why did this urge for dopamine take over my life? So I think this is where social media has made things kind of confusing because people are constantly saying, I need that dopamine hit, got to get my dopamine. But dopamine doesn't really work the way we think. You don't consciously feel dopamine. It's not like someone injects you and you immediately like, there's the dopamine, right? You don't wake up out of bed and say, gosh, I'm feeling very low dopamine levels today, like you're going to check your pulse. And what I hear is when people are describing this, it's usually one of two things. They're seeking anticipation or they're seeking relief. And those are very different. When someone says, I need a dopamine hit, what they often mean is, I need stimulation, excitement. I need comfort. I need newness, novelty. I need a reward. I need a break. I need something to look forward to. I need to change how I feel right now. And if you think about it, that's much more useful information. Because if your real need is rest and connection and maybe some water, alcohol's not going to solve that problem at all. Alcohol won't solve for exhaustion. If your real need is connection, alcohol won't solve for the loneliness. It'll just make you pick up the phone and drunk text those people that you said that you have blocked in your phone. If what you really need is to feel purposeful, shopping's not going to solve that. If you're looking for emotional regulation, God knows scrolling through social media for 2 hours won't solve that. It certainly won't solve the anxiety of, is my life good enough? Because you see, the behavior is not usually the need, right? The behavior is the strategy. And often we develop some pretty lousy ass strategies. Again, back to Dr. Anna Lembke's work in Dopamine Nation. One of the biggest takeaways is that dopamine as a neurotransmitter may play a larger role in wanting a reward than actually enjoying the reward once we get it. Again, I go back to the analogy of travel. I daydream about travel all the time. Maybe I really want that. Maybe even sometimes I want the concept of traveling or the act of booking the trip more than I really want to schlep my ass to the airport, drag all my suitcases, cram myself into a plane, listen to a baby scream for 10 million hours, and arrive somewhere exhausted. Now, don't get me wrong, I love travel, but that's just an example. So again, I'm going to say this. Dopamine plays this role in wanting a reward rather than actually enjoying the reward. And wanting and liking and then actually enjoying something are not the same things. Let's think about this for a second. Wanting versus liking. Most of us assume it's kind of the same thing, but it's not. You can desperately want something and not actually enjoy it nearly as much once you freaking get it, right? We've all experienced that. Anybody who's ever obsessed over getting a dessert all day long and then feel really underwhelmed when the chocolate souffle arrives and it doesn't meet up to all those expectations, or really wanting something, wanting a purse or a piece of jewelry, and maybe it arrives and it's not exactly going to hit the spot like you thought it did. The same thing happens with alcohol. I could spend all day giving examples here because we spend a good amount of our time in our drinking phases planning the drinking, imagining it, preparing for it, romanticizing the hell out of it. And then we finally have the drink. It's fine. It's not a magical elixir. It's not life-changing. It's not nearly as satisfying as your brain has promised. And that's because the dopamine is heavily involved in the pursuit, in the wanting, in the anticipation, sometimes more so than actually enjoying the beverage itself. Now, I think our brain gets sort of attached to the chase. And this whole topic came up for me because the other day I was running errands. I was out past my dinner time. I was exhausted. And I started planning this carbohydrate splurge. Now, part of it was because my blood sugar was low, and I know that's a no-no. But I was like, you know what? I got all these snacks at home. I got Chex Mix and pretzels and popcorn, and I'm going to go home, and instead of eating dinner, I'm just going to make a big-ass thing of snacks. I'm going to pour myself some non-alcoholic wine because I like the sugar and I like the fizz. I'm going to sit down and binge some documentaries on Karin Bortfeld, the legendary Paris Vogue editor. I'm just imagining myself doing all these things. I'm going to be carb loading, eating all this junk, and I'm going to scroll on my phone. I'm going to watch this documentary. And planning that was really fun. The latter half of my errands started to get really fun because I was like, I'm going home to pig out and sit and brain rot, right? This could be so fun. But really, when I sit down to actually do it, and I did, I sat down, I started munching on all these snacks, and I got really thirsty. The salt started making me feel like my mouth was all dry. I'm drinking this non-alcoholic wine, which is gross, and it was sugary. And I was like, really, I just need water. I just needed some protein. Then my hands are all sticky. I've got this mess of crumbs around me. I end up buying something on the internet I really can't afford. And this entire scenario is worked up into my head as it's going to be this fun, amazing thing, right? This night of self-indulgence because I deserve it. And it really didn't even scratch the itch of the fact that I'm overworked and exhausted. I probably needed some peanut butter and a cheese stick and to go to bed. And then I started thinking about this whole thing that I did. It was like gearing myself up for drinking, planning it throughout the day, already rehearsing the permission slip I'm going to give myself to pig out and to eat a whole bunch of popcorn and I usually don't eat past 7 p.m. because it doesn't help me sleep very well. And I go to bed at 9 p.m. So I try to not eat late, right? Sometimes I do. And I certainly try not to carb load, especially salty snacks before bed. But the other day I was like, yes. In my head, I gave myself permission for all this stuff midway through the errands. And so it was like, I was actually kind of giddy when I got home. I was like, okay, I'm gonna set up my space, watch this documentary, just eat the whole, here I am on social media. I'm scrolling through social media, judging other people while I have this like detritus of crumbs falling out of my face, right? And I thought about, okay, that was a once in a while thing, or that was a special occasion of me treating myself to 10,000 calories and a handbag I probably can't afford. And I thought about, what if I did this every single night? Because what if I got into this pattern where every day around 3, 4 o'clock, I was like, well, I went to work today. I folded one load of laundry and I deserve to carb load, eat my ass off, and shop before I go to bed. If I did that every single night, my God, it would become no fun at all. I'd be sitting there in my Cheeto fest with salt and sticky all over my hands. My credit card would be maxed out. I'd put on 10 pounds, probably feel like shit about myself. Who cares about the weight? I'd feel lousy, and then only to realize that I'm doing this every single night because I'm lonely and I need to just call a friend. Now, I have an awesome marriage. I'm happily married. I can go chat with my husband. Sometimes I need some girl time, right? So I was thinking about, God, could you imagine? This is how I got with alcohol. It started out as this reward of like once in a while, and it quickly turned into something that I did every single night. And I started looking forward to it earlier and earlier and earlier. And that was this whole dependency cycle. But some of it was forged on the dopamine I got from the anticipation, because the anticipation is the fucking party, folks. It's not the booze. And I think this is an important idea to reiterate here. The cruel joke is that your brain gets the big dopamine surge before you ever drink. So like I said, the anticipation is the party. What a cruel joke. What a cruel joke. And alcohol is just like the bill you get at the end of the night. And then alcohol is also the gift that keeps on giving. I am 47 years old. If I were to drink today, the hangover lasts 3 weeks. I might even have to go to the hospital and be hospitalized with IV fluids because I'd be vomiting so much. But going back to anticipation, planning. Oh my God, that's the funnest part. Isn't it fun to plan a party, plan a trip, plan a happy hour, to think about it and romanticize about it, build up this big story? I build up a big story in my head about how things are going to go. And all that anticipation becomes such a reward. And that is why cravings feel so fucking powerful. They feel like they're going to take us down. Because what you're feeling during a craving isn't just the desire for alcohol. It's that reward system is firing this entire cascade in the anticipation of relief, in the anticipation brought by dopamine. It's like your brain's spending money before your paycheck even arrives. And I feel like that's why so many women tell me that this craving is just stronger than ever. It was stronger than the drinking. Well, exactly. Biologically, I think there's truth to that, because alcohol is also one of the easiest things to build a fantasy around, because the imagery is pre-programmed. The glam, the wine glass, the martini, the dressing up, going out to a fancy party, or the marketing of we're going to, quote, pour ourselves a glass of wine to relax. We're going to kick our feet up, just like they do in the movies. All the stress is gone. Or, I'm going to thumb through a magazine and on a breezy patio somewhere. And even with men, like the way that it's marketed to men, my husband just had a guy's weekend. It's like marketing of we're all going to sit around and do tequila shots and have a bromance, and knowing full well it's not going to go like that. These men are older and the hangover is going to last forever, right? But they've been marketed to their whole lives as men that their bond would strengthen if they all did tequila shots together and had a beer. When reality, real talk, men in their 50s, they're all on Ozempic, they're all on a Viagra, and they're going to pay for this night for several weeks. But, men and women are marketed to specifically for what we're looking for. I was always looking for that glamorous night when I could hold the wine glass or the martini glass and what I got to wear and getting ready. So I was programmed by media, social media, movies, to think that this is the way, This is the way to glam. And the funny thing is I do more glamorous stuff now. I attend art parties, fashion parties, travel, dinner, whatever, than I ever did before without a drop of alcohol. And it is much more glamorous because I don't have to pay for it the next day. The only thing I pay for is maybe too much Diet Coke. Okay. So we build up this anticipation in our heads. We get all excited all for this. And then going back to that idea that the first sip of alcohol really never lives up to the hype. Have you ever noticed that you plan all day and then like you go home and you have your first glass of wine or your first martini, and maybe it's like, okay, well, especially if you're doing it on the regular and it's something that you feel like you have to drink. Like I went from sipping wine for the taste to going home and chugging the first few glasses just to kind of get it baseline, right? And it never felt as good as I imagined. It was like I built up a movie trailer of what it was going to be, but then the reality of it was, it's just like a movie trailer. The trailer was the best. All the good stuff. So our brains, they're really good at reward prediction. And sometimes the brain gets it right, but sometimes it's wildly exaggerated. Now, I have to believe that there were times in your life that alcohol got it right. The first drink was amazing. It did fulfill all your fantasies that day. Because it always works in the beginning until it stops working. And then we're flooded with messaging. Alcohol tends to be one of the most over-marketed products in our own mind because when we're craving it, we remember the best parts, just like the travel. When I'm craving a trip somewhere and I'm all excited, I'm willing to book that seat by the bathroom and listen to the toilet flush 8,000 times. I'm willing to overlook that because what I'm glamorizing in my head is how fabulous the trip is going to be. Just like when we're craving alcohol, we kind of narrowly remember the best parts, the part where we relax, a little bit of buzz, the good things, the social connection. We remember like, oh, it's going to help me escape, and conveniently forget that my life is a dumpster fire or that it really fucks with my sleep. It fucks with my self-criticism, my diet, my life, my anxiety. I'm going to be sluggish, all the things. We remember like very poignantly just the good. And then we find ourselves sitting in row 43 or row 53 right next to the bathroom, just like planning a plane trip. And I don't know about you, but like, because I got to a point where I almost had to drink several glasses of wine in the evening to feel normal, I would always be stocking up, always be planning. And the wine got cheaper and shittier, and it got less and less glamorous, less and less romantic. And pretty soon I'm coming home to some mega Costco-sized bottle rolling out around in my fridge, and the cork pops off and the wine smells like fridge. It tastes like rotten grapefruit, but it's like, I got to drink this because I just got to get there. It's like it had become more of a necessity. And speaking of, okay, there's this balance between pleasure and pain. And this is another idea I really like from Dr. Anna Lembke's book, Dopamine Nation. She describes in the book pleasure as pain as opposite sides of a seesaw. When we repeatedly push hard on the pleasure side, the brain compensates by pushing back on the pain side. The brain loves balance. I've described this in many, many ways on our podcast. We are constantly trying to maintain homeostasis in our bodies, maintain equilibrium. And the way she describes this with the seesaw is excellent. It's sort of like how I described the A-B process of addiction, of the rebalancing of the neurotransmitters. But she describes it much more practically. If you imagine a seesaw, every artificial spike and jump way up on the seesaw, it has a cost. And alcohol initially feels really rewarding, really relaxing, really pleasurable. That's the A process. But over time, the brain adapts because that's what brains do. A healthy brain will do that. And eventually the pleasure gets weaker. The cravings get stronger. The relief gets shorter. The downside of the seesaw gets longer and bigger. And I think many women will find themselves in a place thinking, why doesn't this work anymore? Certainly when I'm coming home drinking the fridge wine that tastes like rotten bologna sandwich, I'm thinking, this doesn't work like it used to. Why am I having to guzzle more and enjoy it less? Because my brain adapted because of this balance. My brain is doing what it was supposed to do. Alcohol didn't fail me, although alcohol sucks, but it really didn't. It's doing its thing, but my brain adjusted because my brain is doing its part to keep balance. And there's a quote in the book, Dopamine Nation, where she says, the relentless pursuit of pleasure often creates more pain. That is why we are a dopamine nation. Now, this is universal. This is not just you or me. There's a reason the book is called Dopamine Nation and not Dopamine Small Town or Dopamine Select Few, because we all do this. This is a huge thing. But what she's talking about with this pleasure-pain paradox is the great paradox of addiction. We are always, as people, trying to feel better, but eventually the strategy itself can create suffering in so many areas of our life. And in essence, her argument is it's not that pleasure is bad. The book Dopamine Nation, it's saying when pleasure becomes our primary strategy for avoiding discomfort, the strategy eventually creates the suffering we're trying to escape, right? And alcohol is a perfect example of that. It's like putting all your emotional expenses on a credit card. At first, it feels kind of like free money until you get the bill, and the bill adds interest and takes forever to pay off. When you drink to relieve anxiety, then later you get more anxious, right? You get the bill. And so sometimes we drink to avoid discomfort. Just like I said, it's the strategy to relieve anxiety, but then the drinking makes you anxious. That's a perfect way of describing what she's talking about. Pleasure in itself is not bad. Really, if you have one drink once in a while and you can hit it and quit it, great, fine, go off with your moderation, right? But when seeking that pleasure and relief becomes our primary strategy for avoiding discomfort, and for most people, it does. Most people cannot moderate. And so the strategy eventually becomes the very suffering we're trying to escape. Now, when I say moderate, I don't mean most people can't occasionally have a drink. There are many, many people out there that can occasionally go out for drinks. But that's not really what I consider moderation. That's someone who doesn't have an emotional attachment to it. Like I am with a fancy dinner. I could really care less. Food is fuel to me. What I'm really trying to say here about moderation is that if you have tried to quit and can't, moderating is not your friend. You will not be able to moderate. There are people out there that can have one glass of champagne at a wedding. Yes. But that's not what I call moderating. That's what I call someone who's just not that fucking interested in alcohol. If you're really interested, like it really lights you up like it did me, then trying to moderate and tell myself, okay, I can go out every night and have 2 glasses, or I can go out on the weekends and have 4 glasses. That's another address in hell. And most people can't do it. Okay, let me just make that very, very clear, because I don't want to make it sound like no one out there ever can drink just a few drinks, because there are those people, but that's a whole different topic. Okay, back to what I'm talking about. So another example here is social media. And like I said, I could bring up a million examples, but this one really comes in play in my life. I scroll social media often during boredom or to avoid boredom because I don't like to be bored or feel really lonely. Or sometimes I feel like my life's not that cool and I kind of like am curious to see if other people have cooler lives than me. So I scroll and I get a little bit of novelty. See that funny video or the outfit of the day, there's a cute dog or whatever, someone's in Greece. Maybe I get a tiny dopamine spike. But later, I feel distracted and restless. Like I feel behind in life. I feel less focused and more dissatisfied. And I just want more pleasure, which just sticks me into a loop. And so if I can pause and say, whoa, what am I actually craving here? Especially before online shopping. Like if I'm craving connection, no amount of shopping and scrolling is going to solve that. I really like to ask my coaching clients, when they talk about how they had the worst craving for wine and it's horrible, I like to lean in and say, what are you hoping or thinking that wine is going to do for you? Because that's where the real conversation begins. Because the answer is never, I'm dying for some fermented grapes, right? The answer is, I want a break. I want relief. I want to check out. I want connection, reward, all the things, right? You want to exhale from this chaotic life. I get it. The need is legitimate. We all need that. The solution is what I'm questioning, because the craving is just pointing toward a real human need. The problem is that alcohol becomes the default answer. And let me say this again. You are not wrong for needing those things or wanting those things or even craving those things. The need is legitimate. It's the solution we're questioning here. Keyword questioning is we're asking ourselves, what do you think this will really do? Like if you really sit back and think, I need some fermented grapes so that I can poison my mind to not think about my current situation. That's the weirdest thing I have ever heard, cunt. I mean, come on now. Okay. One more caveat. And I want to throw this out there because I have a lot of friends that struggle with ADHD, on the spectrum, neurodivergence. So I want to acknowledge this piece that I think is really important. Women with ADHD may hear this conversation very differently, and they should, because a brain with ADHD genuinely does appear to process reward, novelty, motivation, and dopamine differently. Many women with ADHD, and I have clients, they struggle with tasks that offer a delayed reward. The ADHD brain will respond more strongly to urgency, novelty, challenge, interest, really like fireworks, an immediate reward. When I work with clients that have been diagnosed with ADHD, it's like they need an immediate win. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I'm constantly seeking stimulation, you're not imagining that. That does not mean your brain is broken or lazy or weak or whatever. It may mean that your brain is programmed to require more novelty and engagement than average. And maybe program is the wrong word. Maybe it's neurochemically inclined. Regardless, the challenge I see is that many women, especially with ADHD, accidentally discover alcohol works really well in the short term. So if you are a woman living with ADHD, hear me say this. I'm not trying to say that dopamine doesn't matter and it's meaningless and it's not about the dopamine. It does matter. What I'm saying is that obviously alcohol is not the answer, but we get the dopamine spikes in ways we don't really think about. Anticipation, planning, preparing. Not so much from the thing itself. And I see women with ADD in my life, my friends and clients, they've talked about over the years, the way that they describe it is over the years, they felt understimulated. And so they tried to medicate that nervous system with alcohol. And what they actually needed maybe was more movement, more creativity, more novelty, more challenge, and more support, and God knows a better understanding of how their brain works. Women with ADHD do not need to be gaslit or pathologized as alcoholics or fuck-ups. We just need to understand how your brain works and meet it where it's at, right? That's all. And oftentimes, women with ADHD are the most creative, innovative, brilliant minds. And so, I digress. Okay, and I want to talk about one other thing, and that is the returning to alcohol after we've been abstinent for a while. Some people call it relapse. I don't really use that word. I don't care. Why would you return to drinking after you've been abstinent for a while? I think what happens to people is it starts with a fantasy. This is where the return to booze, when you don't really plan to, starts with this fantasy, this mental rehearsal. And then there's this bargaining. Oh yeah, if I just this one time. And then the selective memory, like I told you, you forget what it's like to sit in row 43B by the fucking bathroom. You forget the hangovers. You forget how many times you told yourself you were going to stop because you've got selective memory and you are negotiating. You are romanticizing how amazing it's going to be. So I say it starts with the fantasy, but it's like the story we've built up. The brain starts constructing this narrative, and that narrative, that story, you get dopamine, you get anticipation, and dopamine drives behavior. It is really tied to motivation. So long before alcohol actually enters the picture, before you've gone and picked up a bottle of glass or whatever, you've had this big story in your head. And so being aware and pausing really matters. And that's why you will hear the power in the pause, or a lot of coaches reinforcing, like, when you feel a craving, pause for a moment before you start forming this big story in your head. Don't just notice it. Don't just notice the craving. Also notice the big damn story you've told yourself that's attached to it. I've told myself stories like, I can't go on dates. I can't put it on a bikini. I'm not going to be as fun. I'm not going to be as sexy. All the things. And next thing you know, I'm drinking again when I promised myself I wasn't going to. But if I really go back, it's like, oh yeah, I had this whole story worked up in my head of what I need to put in my body in order to become a version of me. And oftentimes that version of me was inauthentic and performative anyway. I digress. Play the tape forward, finish the fucking movie. You've built this trailer in your head, right? Play the tape forward. One of the most helpful things I tell clients is to play the damn tape all the way to the end of the movie. The brain loves to show us the commercials, but it rarely shows us the full story, right? The brain loves to show us the trailer, but it rarely shows us the full story. And in the trailer, it's like the highlight reel. You're going to relax. You're going to unwind. You're going to feel better. But when you play the tape all the way forward, you watch the end of the movie and you're face down in your own vomit. You've shit your pants. You've missed work. You've disappointed your loved ones. The credits go up, because I could talk forever about what the end of the movie looks like. So your job is to play it forward, so that you're not living in this fantasy trailer. And I want to caveat here also and say, the goal is not to become a person who never seeks dopamine. I think people get that wrong about recovery. It's not about becoming boring. It's not about never seeking pleasure. You're not a fucking houseplant. Human beings are designed to seek reward. We're supposed to look forward to things. We're supposed to get excited and pursue meaningful experiences in our lives. Again, back to Dopamine Nation. Dr. Lembke talks about novelty, challenge, learning, growth. All those things can activate dopamine pathways. Your brain loves anticipation. It doesn't care where the anticipation comes from. That's why you'll hear people tell you to get a hobby. And the same brain can learn to anticipate a creative project, a trip, a race you're preparing for, a concert you signed up for, a meal, a class, whatever. Since I've gotten sober, I've made an effort to plan girls' weekends. And personally, I'm sitting here looking at new business ideas because I want to stay engaged in the novel idea. Starting this podcast has kept me engaged in something exciting. It's a meaningful goal, a deep conversation, because I never want to spread the messaging that being in recovery is about low dopamine levels and being less excited about life. It's not that at all. It's just about teaching your brain to get excited about different things. Part of why I dove so hard into fashion history, fashion commentary, style, culture, legacy media, all things fashion, is because I needed something to teach my brain to get excited around creative projects. So as I go, when my brain seeks dopamine, because it will, because I'm human, I did not get sober and then have zero need for any dopamine in my life. That's not how it works. I'm probably on the verge of having ADHD. I constantly want some kind of stimulation. But because I've filled my life with a business and a podcast and activities and all this fashion stuff, I have magazines sitting around. I have documentaries waiting. I have clothes to play with. I bought a sewing machine. Like, I constantly have things that I can do. So I guess as a final thought, the next time your brain tells you that you need a dopamine hit, pause. Just get curious about it and ask yourself, what do you really need? Do you really need some rest? Right? Do you really need a friend, some connection, something fun, some novelty? You might even just need some comfort. Like I said, rest, some reward. We all need reward, but most often, alcohol isn't the thing that you're craving. It's that feeling you believe it will give you. It's the feeling you believe alcohol will create. And once you understand this distinction, you can stop fighting yourself so much, gaslighting yourself, feeling like a failure. You can stop seeing a craving as a command that you have to do something. Instead, a craving is just information. So stop judging yourself. Like, start getting curious and understanding yourself. Your brain is not fucked up. It's doing what a human brain is designed to do. That's the whole premise here. Brains adapt, they rewire. And you can teach your brain to look forward to something besides alcohol. So cravings don't have as much power over you. I hope this was helpful. Go be fabulous. You have the power. All right, that's what I got for you today. If this hits, send it to a woman who needs to hear this shit, because we are not doing this alone. You can find me on Instagram and pretty much all the socials at Rewired Sober. The links are in my show notes if you want to work with me one-on-one and go deeper. I love you, mean it, take care of yourself, and I'll catch you on the next one.